Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast.
This is the one meeting that should not be an email. The research is clear and powerful. Leaders who do one-on-one meetings well, the gains are tremendous. We see it positively affecting employee experience, employee engagement, even retention of your top talent. This is not an optional activity. This is a core requirement of leadership. Everyone is craving feeling seen, and one-on-ones are the mechanism. One-on-ones are an investment of time that actually saves you time. This is a core activity of being a leader.
That's Dr. Stephen Rogelberg. He's been called the world's leading expert on how to fix meetings, and Adam Grant even said Stephen Rogelberg knows more about how to improve meetings than anyone on earth. Stephen spent a whole lot of time, many years, researching how to make meetings more efficient and engaging, and today he's going to help us fix the one-on-one meeting. So you'll learn 1, why having more one-on-ones actually saves time, 2, how to create a meeting agenda that works, and 3, the right way to ask your manager for help. I'm Pete Bacchitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Stephen. Stephen, welcome to How to Be Awesome at Your Job.
Thank you. It's really great to be here.
Well, I'm stoked to be chatting about your book, Glad We Met, The Art and Science of One-on-One Meetings. But first, I have to hear from you. Can you think of a particularly transformational or consequential one-on-one meeting in your own life and what made it so special?
Yeah, it was really the experience of leading one with one of my directs and just seeing how it impacted her. So she came into the one-on-one in a really bad place. And then by the end of it, she was in a different place. She was kind of charged up to address the challenges that she was confronting. And I mean, I was just grateful. I mean, it feels great to help one of your directs who is struggling.
Totally. And can you tell us, broadly speaking, and not just in your own experience there, but in your research and across workplaces, really what's at stake if we have one-on-one meetings go amazingly versus okay?
Well, I mean, the research is clear and powerful. Leaders who do one-on-one meetings well, the gains are tremendous. We see it positively affecting employee experience, employee engagement, even retention of your top talent. From a team perspective, there's a strong linkage between good one-on-ones and team performance. Inclusion efforts are enhanced. And the sweet composite of all this is that this is really good for the manager, right? Because as your people and as the team thrives, it only reflects well on you. So one-on-ones are one of these activities that everyone benefits from.
All right. Well, as you did your research, tell me, did anything really surprise you or strike you or seem shocking?
I thought it was really interesting that when we surveyed employees about how often they'd want a one-on-one meeting with their manager, well, let me throw it back at you, Pete. What do you think? What do you think the typical response is? How often do people want one-on-ones with their manager?
More than they're getting is the general theme, I would say.
That's a really good response. So the typical response was weekly. And what was so interesting is that more senior employees actually desired even more one-on-ones than more junior employees. So counter to generational stereotypes, we see a reverse of that.
Oh, that's right. That is a great reversal of generational stereotypes.
I think everyone wants to be seen.
Yeah.
And one-on-one meetings are that opportunity to be seen. And I think with these senior level folks, they know, right? They know with their experience how critical it is to have this contact with their manager that really focuses on success, alignment, removing barriers and obstacles. So they get it. And because they get it, they want it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So they know it matters and they want it all the more. So that's what we want. Well, what are we getting?
Well, the cadence out there is very variable. Some managers are meeting with their people once a week. Many others are doing it once a month. That's very common. Still others do it quarterly, which is basically a no meeting cadence. But more concerning is our research generally shows that around 50% of one-on-ones are rated suboptimally. And so we're not realizing their full potential. And then, Pete, the thing that's crazy is that if you survey these two individuals leaving the meeting room, the manager thinks it went much better than the direct. They seem to have a little bit of a blind spot.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's quite a confluence of forces, a perfect storm here. People want lots of one-on-one meetings. They're not getting those one-on-one meetings. When they happen, they're usually disappointing. And yet the manager thinks that things are going just fine and dandy all at the same time.
Exactly. I mean, Pete, you literally just nailed why I wrote this book. I mean, it was to address that statement exactly.
Okay, so lay it on us then, Stephen. If we are hurting on this dimension, what are the top things we can do to improve it?
So some of the common mistakes is people don't prepare. They don't try to find this connective tissue between one-on-ones. And that's really the wonderful value of one-on-ones, is that you can create this connective tissue and to build momentum. They're not doing them at the right cadence. They are making the meeting more about the manager and less about the direct. They can't help themselves. They talk more than the direct, which is one of the greatest predictors of one-on-one ineffectiveness. They don't have a plan of action. They don't involve the direct in creating that plan of action. They don't kind of create an environment that's psychologically safe. So the directs don't come in there and actually share what's important to them. They don't, at the end of the one-on-one, recap what was agreed upon. And they don't follow through on the various commitments. So those are some of the plagues that happen, but there's so many more. I mean, we could go into cancellations, for example. One of the biggest mistakes that managers do is they cancel these one-on-ones frequently. And think about what a signal that is to your employees, that basically you have this activity that's about them, but if something else comes up that's pressing, you cancel, right? You immediately lower the importance of your employees. And what we found in the research is much better practice is if you have to cancel, move up the meeting as opposed to move it back, even if you only meet with that person for 10 minutes. But that type of a behavior, as opposed to being a negative signal, becomes a positive signal that no matter what, you're going to find that time for your people.
That's huge. It's so funny because it does happen all the time. I've seen it and I've been guilty, I guess, on both sides. And with it, it's so interesting. I think the manager's perspective is maybe something like, well, this is something within my control. My people, I have some flexibility and leeway here to move this around versus super big deal client that, oh no, I have to bend over backwards and deal with them pronto. Like I have no choice in that matter.
That's
versus this meeting with my people, hey man, we're cool. We can shift that around, no problem.
That's right.
But it's not so cool.
It's not. And I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, people go through their work days, looking at signals about their value, signals of their importance, signals about who their manager really is. And we have to be careful. Like sometimes we say one thing, but our signals and behaviors suggest something very different. And so one of the things I really get into in the book is that this is not an optional activity. This is a core requirement of leadership. And the alternative title for the book that I played with is this is the one meeting that should not be an email. And because this is a stage for leadership. This is where leadership really happens. Now, we've all heard the old adage that people don't leave bad jobs. They leave bad bosses. And one-on-ones are this opportunity to display awesome leadership, to foster these meaningful relationships with your people, to help them on their path and on their journey. And by doing so, all boats are raised.
All right. Now, previously you used the term connective tissue, just to make sure we don't lose that.
Okay.
What precisely does that mean?
One-on-ones really move to the next level when each one-on-one kind of connects with a past one-on-one. So let's say that you and I are having a one-on-one, Pete, and as part of it, it emerges that you are struggling with conflict management types of tasks, that it really brings you down, it drains you, it just takes this really big toll. So we spend some time talking about it. We share some resources, what have you. Well, our next one-on-one, if I start the one-on-one by saying, hey, Pete, I know you were working on some of the conflict management stuff. How's that been going for you? Right? That conveys that I've been listening, that I care, that I'm tracking these things. So to the extent that the story, right, the story of your career, the story of your success continues, it just becomes a much more powerful conversation. It's like, imagine a relationship with a friend who completely forgets everything that you both talked about last time, right? That friendship would not thrive.
All right. Well, Stephen, it seems like a huge part of this value and goodness can be unlocked simply by deciding, okay, this is a priority. I'm going to make the time. I'm not going to shift the meetings around. I'm going to take the time to thoughtfully prepare. I'm going to listen. So let's say that someone is committed.
Yep.
They've got the will. What are some of the practices that even then they might overlook?
So, one of the things that I found it pretty surprising. When we were looking at some of the design factors around these, and, I wasn't sure about the importance of an agenda for one-on-ones. And it only happens around 50% of the time. But what the research showed is that when there was an agenda, but a lightweight agenda, those one-on-ones seem to excel much greater. So when we think about what that agenda could look like, I want to share a couple approaches that seem to be most well received. One is the listing approach, where you tell your direct, come to the one-on-one with a list of topics that you want to talk about. I'll create a list as well, but please know my list is secondary. I'm only going to bring up my list if it meshes with yours or if we have time. Also, when you're creating your list, I want you to think big, small, long-term, short-term, you, your team, your organization, right? Because we want the employee to do a broader scan when they're creating their list. So that's the listing approach. And that would be a great thing for the manager to facilitate. And the more you involve the direct in creating this process, the better. The second approach is called the core question approach. And this is where, with your direct, you basically identify 4 or 5 core questions that form the foundation of the one-on-one. For example, what obstacles are you experiencing and how can I help you? Right? So you create these questions together, and then the direct has the ability to really guide the meeting in lots of different ways. Now, in both of these approaches, there's a few things to keep in mind. One is we don't want these meetings to turn into a status update, fall into a status update trap, where all we talk about is what's going on in that project, what's going on in that project, what's going on in that project, because that is not truly a meeting for the direct. So therefore, we want to make sure that we rotate questions over time. It might be the case that we even dedicate certain amounts of time, each one of these one-on-ones, for a longer horizon career-based discussion. That's totally fine. So we want to make sure we're flexible. We want to ask good questions, but we even want to think about the response options associated with them. And let me give you an example, and maybe this might also fall into your category of surprise. So a very common question is, how are you? Well, sounds like a reasonably good question. Sadly, it doesn't work. When you ask someone, how are you? They typically have automatic responses. I'm fine. Pretty good. Great. That doesn't really tell you much. But if we change the response options, if we ask the individual, I'm interested in how you are, but I want you to let me know on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being horrible, 10 being great. How are you showing up today? Now you get responses of 5s, of 6s, of 7s. Now you have something to work with, right? You can explore it. You can understand it. So we need to think about these questions. We want to have really interesting, important, relevant questions that your direct is really strongly informing. And then it's about good facilitation, good engagement, asking lots of questions. Tell me more about this. What are your thoughts about it? Because we ultimately want to give the gift of communication to the direct. But I will say this, and I'll pause, is that it is hard. The research has shown that people talk a lot because it activates the same parts of the brain as good food. So we talk a lot because it feels kind of good. And we need to give that gift to someone else, namely the direct, for this one-on-one to truly shine.
Great perspectives here. And I'd love it we jumped right into some very precise practices. Maybe take a step back. What should be our mindset, our underlying goal, our approach? Like, I am doing this one-on-one in order to blank. Therefore, I will do it in the following style or way.
Mm-hmm. When rolling out one-on-ones, it's really important to tie it to values. And we did this. If you ask managers about what they value and you look at organization value statements, they are basically shouting one-on-ones. You invariably will see values such as helping others, supporting, leveraging team, all these things. Well, one-on-one is a manifestation of those values. So when you're rolling this out to your folks, you want it to be about values and that you are committed to their growth and their success. And you're engaging in one-on-ones to basically live these values. And you're going to be nimble. You're going to keep changing these up based on their feedback, their ideas, right? Because you want them to have this large shaping influence for this to truly work. And it's constantly reminding yourself that this meeting is not for you. This is that one time where you are just fully focused on what's on the mind of the directs. As a manager, you have power. You can meet with your direct anytime you want, right? You can send an email asking, hey, what's going on with this project, right? You can do that in an asynchronous document. There's lots of mechanisms for you to have your needs met. This is just your mechanism to make sure their needs are being met. And when we think about their needs, it's not just their practical and tactical needs, but it's their personal needs, the need to feel respected and trusted. These are fundamental kind of human needs. And when the one-on-one can address both of those sets of needs, then the direct leaves the one-on-one feeling pretty good. It doesn't mean that they're going to leave there with a big smile on their face, because who knows, maybe you talked about really hard stuff, but at least they'll feel truly seen.
Can you share with these needs, is there a sort of taxonomy or set of key categories or top needs that should really be top of mind as we're trying to deliver on these in the one-on-ones?
Love it. I provide a taxonomy in the book and I line up questions for each one of them. And because you're raising such a key issue, really the types of needs could be around the individual's work. It could be the obstacles to their success. So if we want to think about it as levels, right? So they have needs around their individual work. There could be needs around the team. There could be needs around the organization, better understanding organizational strategy, organizational priorities, organizational communications. So you have this individual, team, organization, and then you have the time horizon associated with each of them, right? There's short-term and long-term. In each of those boxes, that's where you have those practical needs. And then the underlying that are those personal needs, right? Those psychological experience of the conversation. And those things together is really what a complete one-on-one is. Now, with that said, you can't do everything in these one-on-ones. You can only do so much. If your one-on-one is 20, 25 minutes, which is okay if that's what you need to do, we want quality over quantity. And if it turns out that the direct just wants to focus on one particular issue or one particular need, so be it. If that's what's on their mind, we want to go with it. We will remind them that, hey, I know you wanted to talk about some other things. It looks like we're not going to get to them. Is that okay with you? Right? So we're constantly signaling this is your meeting. And because it's their meeting, they can choose to spend as much time on any particular topic that they so desire.
Well, let's shift gears for a moment. Let's say you're not the manager. You are the direct report who would like to have one-on-ones with more frequency, or you're having the one-on-ones and they're not hitting the mark. How do you recommend we show some initiative, some proactive shaping to get what we're after here?
So how I frame it in my content is really, it takes two to tango, right? Each party does have responsibilities. While the manager has the most responsibilities, the direct does too. And in our research, we've identified 10 key behaviors that directs have. And we don't have time to go into all of them, but let me share a few. So first of all, you can't get what you need unless you know what you need. And so before that one-on-one, the direct actually has to really think, really think about what their challenges, issues, problems are, needs are. And that takes a little bit of thought. And so many times directs go into these one-on-ones not doing that. And by doing so, they're violating the spirit of the one-on-one. And the void, the gap will be filled, but with managers' needs. So know what you need. That's first. Second, don't be afraid to ask for help. Asking for help is critical to human success. But the research generally shows that there's two types of help-seeking behavior. There's autonomous help-seeking behavior and dependent. Now, dependent help-seeking is really where you ask the other party to solve your problem.
Mm-hmm.
Autonomous help-seeking is really about acquiring information and insight so you can solve your problem yourself. And autonomous help-seeking is associated with long-term success. Dependent is not. So when you go in there, you know what you need, you're asking for help in a autonomous way, you're getting ideas, you're listening to feedback, you're checking yourself to not be defensive, you're engaging in really good rapport behaviors, because who knows, maybe your manager's not good at establishing rapport. So you're jumping in to make sure there is good rapport. And you're expressing gratitude. You might even offer help to your manager because, one of the things we know about help behavior is when you offer help to other people, they tend to offer help back to you. So the direct has an active role to making these things truly work. But in so many regards, the direct is going to look at the signals of what the manager is doing and not doing. And those signals are really going to drive how seriously they enter into that one-on-one.
Mm-hmm. All right, Stephen, tell me, anything else critical you want to make sure to cover before we shift gears and hear about some of your favorite things?
There's a few things that I'll just kind of throw out there. One-on-ones are truly an essential activity, especially in a more distributed workforce. Everyone is craving feeling seen, and one-on-ones are the mechanism. I also want to put out there that one-on-ones are an investment of time that actually saves you time. Namely, what has generally been found is that when you have these regular one-on-ones with your folks, you tend to get less spontaneous interruptions because people seem to save their issues. Furthermore, because one-on-ones elevate the direct's performance, there's less time spent on rework. Furthermore, because when one-on-ones are done well, employees are more engaged and they're less likely to leave the organization. So the point being is that you have many managers who say, I just don't have time. Well, the fact is, this truly is going to make time. One of the things I do in the book is I talk about other areas where you can drop activities to find time, but this is just not one of them. This is a core activity of being a leader. And then I wanted to say one other thing, which I think you might get a kick out of. The core elements of the book, really lays out, it gives the manager choices. Right. So I've identified all these evidence-based techniques that can make these better, but I don't prescribe. I don't say do A, then B, then C, because the science doesn't align with that. This is also why I stress both the art and the science. So you know your values, you know your people. So you have choices and you can take these choices and make them work for you. And there's another interesting application of all this. One-on-ones could actually be done with your children. And I know that sounds crazy, and I'm not at all suggesting you have these rigid calendar holds with your kids. But the fact is, a lot of the core elements of one-on-ones do apply to these familial relationships. It's so often that parents don't actually truly talk to their child on the child's terms, right? Really exploring what's on their minds and just finding that dedicated space. And clinicians have been talking about this for a long time, that when a parent does a lot of these same practices with their kids, it builds better relationships, more self-efficacy for them, and they thrive. So I think that what's cool about the book is it's not only good for your career, whether you're a leader or a direct, but you can apply it to these other contexts.
Stephen, that's powerful. And I recently asked my 5-year-old son, what do I do with you that makes you feel the most loved by me?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, when we have Dada Johnny time,
Aw.
one-on-one. And that's powerful because it is just like for the manager, it's very easy to not do that in the midst of this house is a mess.
Right.
And there's two other siblings crying out for attention.
Right.
So it's like, you really got to conscientiously have to stop the world and say, no, this is what we're doing right now. Is that me and Johnny are chatting and no one else is allowed in the room. That's what we're doing now.
Oh, man. Pete, that is a beautiful story, by the way. And I mean, you just nailed it. That's just a great example. I mean, it's just as a young human to an old human, we all just want to feel seen. The thought of people taking an interest in us is so incredibly meaningful. And if we want to elevate work, people, teams, and humanity more broadly, we need to make time for these conversations.
Beautiful. Well, now could you share with us a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
I like the quote, living well is the best revenge.
All right. And a favorite book?
There's this book, and I don't know the author. It's called Postmortal. And basically, it's this dystopian novel that gets to a point where all humans can live forever, assuming they don't fall off a building. And what is so cool about it is it just talks about the implications of a society that doesn't die. And clearly that's not sustainable. But at the same time, when people don't die, it creates great challenges to institutions that we kind of take for granted. For example, what's marriage if you don't die? So I just really liked the story, and I liked some of the more intellectual kind of dilemmas that it created.
All right. And Stephen, is there a particular quote that you share, a Stephen original, that seems to really connect and resonate with folks?
It might be something around the notion of stewardship. So this is something I talk about a lot, that the best meeting leaders recognize that they're inherently a steward of others' time.
And Stephen, do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Make meaningful time available to those on your team, in your network, and do as much good as you can do. Elevate as many lives as you can. And ultimately, through both of those, the wonderful benefit is that you will thrive as well. I always go back to one of the greatest predictors of life satisfaction is helping of others. And one-on-ones are that opportunity to sincerely and truly help others.
All right, Stephen, thank you for this. I wish you many transformational one-on-ones.
Thank you very much. And definitely folks can check out my website, stephenrogelberg.com. I have a ton of resources there for people, lots of things, checklists that they can download. I obviously have links to the book. The neat thing is, I just want to get this book out there. I'm donating all my royalties to the American Cancer Society, every penny of them. So check out the book if you want to have transformative one-on-ones, or check out the book if you want to help eradicate cancer.
I love Stephen's take on moving the one-on-ones up ahead instead of pushing them back if you have to reschedule, to convey the good vibes and the signals that are interpreted like, oh, I guess I'm a low priority who can be moved around and canceled all the time. No. I am such a priority that if it must be moved for a great, important reason, then it will be moved to happen faster. Great stuff from Stephen. The show notes, the transcript, the links to items that we've referenced are found at awesomeatyourjob.com/EP927. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
Thanks for listening. To get the most out of the show, we recommend 2 key things. First, check out the extra resources at awesomeatyourjob.com. You can find this episode's transcript and links, as well as the perfect episode for your situation. You can search the full text transcripts of hundreds of episodes or explore episodes tagged by topic and competency covered. Second, subscribe to the podcast and get future episodes automatically. You can subscribe by telling Siri and several other smartphones and speakers, subscribe to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, or by tapping subscribe in your podcast player of choice. If you'd like some extra help figuring out podcasts and how subscriptions work, visit awesomeatyourjob.com/subscribe for guidance. Hope to catch you on the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.